And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. And tonight, I want to say thank you to everyone who's joining us and watching this episode on a special night for a special guest. And I have to say, this is a unique experience because I actually got to meet this guest at a paranormal event. And we were discussing that the topic we're going to be talking about tonight, we're not even sure has ever actually aired on a podcast. So this may be a first in history. No pressure there.
No pressure. Just, the bar's just right over here. It's fine.
But I am so grateful that she agreed to be a guest on the show. And we had so much fun chatting at the event that I feel very confident y'all are going to have so much fun with this episode and learn so much.
And that bar just keeps going up.
Yep, I'm going to stop raising it at this point and just go and say, welcome to my guest, the amazing, talented, friendly, open, and open-minded, I should say. And so nice and so friendly and sharing her information in such a way that it just puts you at ease of what's going on. And I could keep going, but let's turn it over to the one, the only, the awesome, amazing, magnificent Barbara Kerford.
And we can't even see the bar anymore. So thank you so much for having me. I know I had so much fun at the paranormal event that we met at, and always so much fun whenever I get to do aura photos. It's been something I've been doing for about 5 years now, and I always just love how it seems to hit the nail on the head with so many people, but they're just like, "Oh my gosh, yes, that's me. Wait, how did you?" I'm like, "It's not me, it's the machine."
So how did you get into aura photography?
Well,
and how did your business come about?
So my entry into kind of just energy work, like Reiki and all that stuff, started probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when my mom heard about Abraham Hicks. And she and I started going to their things and going to live events with them back when Jerry was still alive, and it was a whole different vibe. And we started with that. Then my mom started getting interested in all these different modalities. And then I kind of followed along and I was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds cool. I'll do that. Yeah. Angels. Cool. I'm in." And then kind of put it aside for a few years and was just like, okay. And then I had recently left a job that I had in New Mexico, and my old business partner, who's still a good friend of mine, had also recently left her job. And she was like, "Have you ever heard of aura photos?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yeah, I had one taken years ago." And she was like, "We should start a business doing that." And I was like, "We should." And then, life leads you in different directions. And, she had a baby, and all of a sudden weekend events aren't as fun anymore. And you're like, so I took over the company then and have been doing it ever since, and traveling around. And usually it's between Albuquerque and San Antonio, South Texas, but occasionally go up to Palestine, or someone invites me, I'm like, sure, I'll take a trip. So yeah. And then, we started the business and it's just taken off. Been so much fun.
So when I'm curious, and a lot of people may not understand this, when we say you're taking an aura photo, what exactly are you taking a photo of?
The energy that surrounds you. So it is actually the electromagnetic energy field that surrounds all of us. So you know when you sometimes meet someone for the first time and you're like, "Ugh, I feel like I don't like them," or like other people, you're like, "Oh my gosh, we just clicked instantly." A lot of times that has to do with the energy that you put out into the world and your own personal energy, whether they mesh or don't. And so that is your auric field, basically, like literally the energy that surrounds you. And so we use a state of the art hand sensor that the client, it's actually looks like this. And you put your hand on it, and the hand, it reads the energy of your hand and creates a visual interpretation of your auric field. And with that, we can tell, different things, like depending on where it is, like every aura has like a specific anatomy. So like this is one example of an aura photo, there we go, what the aura photo looks like when it's I'm trying to figure out my camera. I'm like backwards, forwards. So what an aura actually looks like. So each part of this is a different part of your anatomy of your aura. So like the color that you are grounded in is here at the bottom. At the top is like your present energy in the moment, how you go after your goals and aspirations. The photo right, person left is your internal. So it's like really how you work with your emotions, how your internal thoughts, the things that you don't always share with the world. The other side, the picture left, person right, is your external world. So what you put out into the world. And some people are also like, the one side is like your past, the other side is like what's coming, like what the energy you're starting to bring in and attract is as well. But I find it's more, external, internal for me. And then the middle color right through here is really need to just look at it. Right through here is the primary personality color. So when someone's like, what color is your aura? That middle color is really your aura, your like kind of essence of what your aura is. And so it all comes off of this sensor. It started years ago. They did all this like personality testing and emotional testing on people, and they had psychics who could actually see auras, because you've heard of people who are like, oh yeah, I see auras. Oh, you have and they'll just tell you what your aura is. Or like if you shake your hand really hard in the sun, you can like see the colors around it. Like people who could just naturally see auras, they had them describe as they were testing with these people what colors they were seeing, and use that plus like color therapy, the science of colors and like what colors do what, psychology of colors, I guess, maybe. I don't know. You know what I mean? So it's like they put all of that together, figured out how it was like emitted through the hand, and then it goes into a computer program that comes up with the colors and the placements.
And I know we talked about this at the event, but I just want to bring awareness to the fact that even though the photo is standing, you sit for this. So it makes me want, and I loved how you explained it, but when you're sitting there, how does the system know from reading your hand how to make the image standing?
It's it's not. So it's just giving the full picture of your aura. So even though you're sitting, so when you get this picture, so this is the aura photo, what you'll normally get with just the aura photo. So this is the headshot version of the other picture. So in this one, we're only seeing the part that we're actually taking the photo with the camera. So the picture of the person is the camera photo. The colors all around are what the hand sensor is reading. So all of this is what the hand sensor reads, your chakras and your aura. And so it's reading everything every time. But because we're only taking a picture of your face to have it in the picture, it looks like it's only taking this part. But it's really your hand, it's reading the entire auric field.
Right. And it does. And that's why I wanted to make that clear so people don't sit there and think, wait, you're having me sitting here. I wanted the full body aura photo. Why are you only doing this much? And it's like, no, you're going to get it.
Exactly. I've had people like, okay, so when do I stand? And I'm like, oh, you don't have to. And I'm like, oh, no, it's just, it does it all. So, yeah.
And it always gets your good side.
Exactly. It's always like, I know so many people come up and they're like, oh gosh, my aura is going to be black. And I'm like, there's no, and even if it is, like, I have a sample here of like an aura with some dark spots in it. And like, even with that, that's usually just showing changes in your life. Like for this person, look at it. So as we're looking at like an aura like this, really can figure out my camera. Like it looks like their grounding energy is changing because you see it kind of near their feet. So I would probably tell them they're stepping into some new energy. It looks like they're reaching for something new on their external side. They're releasing some stuff on their internal side. So it's like, oh, it could be like, and most of the time when I'm talking about things like that, like if it's coming near the heart, people are like, oh yeah, I just got out of a relationship. Or if it's, going from like a lot of times with the hands, I find that it's career oriented where they're like, oh yeah, I just released something from, I just quit a job and I'm coming into a new job, and they're reaching for something new. So like, even when we see like what looks like dark energy in the aura, a lot of times it's, I don't want to say questionable energy, but it's energy of like something that you haven't fully stepped into yet, or something that's coming about. So,
Right.
like the unknown.
Yeah, and I made the image wider for you so you didn't feel cramped into the
I know.
screen.
I'm like, it's right here. I love it.
And I find it interesting too is how I understand the sensor, is reading the energy in the electromagnetic field, but I love how when we were talking about it, it's like I was thinking about stuff that I normally don't think about, and you were able to pick up on it. So that, is like amazing to me. And is that from your energy work that you've done in the past, or is that the colors really do reveal what you want to hide, or,
Was I calling you out on something? Sorry. It's a little of both. So when we go through, like when I'm watching the screen, I'll literally see, like, most times I'll say something like, okay, focus on yourself now. And sometimes I'll see a glitch in the screen and I'll be like, interesting, and I'll just tag it. And then after we're done, I'll be like, okay, so you don't like focusing on yourself. Like you're more of like, and I'm like, because the minute I said focus on yourself, the screen went, and I'm like, oh, you got nervous there. Or like, and then I'll say, or like, and then like, whenever you're intuitively guided, take your hand off the sensor. And if someone blips on intuitive, I'm like, oh, you don't trust your intuition. So it's showing me things, but it's also like years, the 5 years that I've been looking at this and watching and talking to people. Like I used to have, I'm sure one of these pictures has it, where with the chakras, they show further out or closer into the body, depending on how open and closed they are. And I remember for a while, I'd be like, oh gosh, your heart's really closed. Like it's close to your body. Like that's how I knew it. And then I did an aura reading on one of my best friends who's an empath. And I was like, wait, your crown is really, I was like, that's weird that your crown's so small because you're an empath. Like I would expect it to be open because you're taking in so much. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's protecting. So when we see the chakras really close to the body, instead of being like, I'm closed off, or sometimes it is like you've been using that chakra. If you've just moved, your root chakra, your sacral are going to be smaller because you're like, I'm trying to get used to my new normal. Who am I now? What am I, like doing in my world? How am I in this new position or in this new home? So those sometimes are like you've been using a lot of that energy or you're questioning that energy. But sometimes it's also like you're just protecting, like, she was an empath. She didn't want to take on everyone's energy. So she protected it by like closing up her root chakra to be protected from that. So it's a really interesting, especially like I found there's a Bruja Fest in Albuquerque, and I saw a mother and daughter who both had very protected heart chakras. And I was like, did something recently happen like in your family to see like a mother and a daughter both have the exact same heart chakra really closed? And they were like, no. And I was like, wow, they're like really in protective mode. I can't figure out. And she's like, oh my gosh, we sprayed protection spray on ourselves before we came here. And I was like, there it is. And so it's like the more I like discover and like talk to people about what's going on in their lives while I'm doing the aura, the more I can really like use this, I guess, diagnostic tool to really interpret accurately. So, but then when I'm reading the colors, like I have 5 positives, 3 negatives on every color. And there I kind of go intuitively, like I'll read them all, but then I'll intuitively pick like, oh, this is you. There we go. And like, what am I going to say about this? What am I going to talk about for you specifically? So, yeah.
And I in disclosure, because I had said, or not disclosure, transparency. I I had said that we had mine done, and I mentioned to you in advance, before coming on, that yeah, I have mine up if you wanted to use it as example. And so I was just pulling it up and trying to figure out if I could actually get it up onto,
Share that.
and that was me.
I love it. Okay. Yes. So looking at your aura, so you can see right under too, where it's showing you what the top, left, center, right. And then the bottom, I'm guessing, is probably either orange or red. So for me, that shows that you're, the red aura, specifically in the top, like you really probably think a lot. You're very hardworking. Your mind works really fast and a lot. And you're like probably one of those people who, instead of zoning out when you drive, you're like, okay, I'm thinking about this, that. And then you get home and you're like, wait, how did I get here? Because your brain's just on overdrive, but it's not that I'm just in daydreaming. It's like I'm figuring problems out, like hardworking, very ambitious, active, powerful, grounded. And then when we talk about the flip side of red is sometimes challenges with male energies. I'm going to grab my sheet because, I'm like sort of going into survival mode, resentment, or challenges with male energies. And I think we probably talked about this, where sometimes with the male energy, the masculine side is going to be picture left, person right. And so with that, it's sometimes that you give so much and you don't allow people to give to you. And so when I'm seeing so much red, I feel like you're so hardworking. You're so like passionate about what you do. And that really like internally, that's like, you're very strong and very passionate about what you do. And then sometimes you give so much that you forget to be like, oh yeah, let me take something for myself. Let me accept whatever you're offering. And then we see out on the external side, actually you have a cross. Did we talk about that cross? There's like a little bit of a cross right on. So if you look at the photo left, right in that kind of gold, there's almost like a brighter light that almost looks like a cross. And usually
Right
when we
here?
see it, yeah, exactly. And so that's like either one of your guides who's like guiding you, where you find yourself a lot of times in the right place at the right time or things like that. And with the cross specifically, a lot of times that is like a loved one who's passed, who's still with you. So when we see that, like, I don't know if I noticed it in your picture or not when we did this, so it may be something extra, but you've also got the orange on your external side, which, is very much about being adventurous, goal-oriented, creative, sociable, balanced. Flip side, that can feel like trauma, a need for healing from the past, addictions, or trouble committing. And so when we look at that, you're going to look at your positive side to figure out, like, let's say you're having trouble committing to something. You're going to want to look for, like, let's say there's a project that you've got your passion. We see the passion all over your aura. So you've got that passion, but you're like, I don't know why I'm not actually committing to this. Like there's something in my way. The positive aspects of orange are being adventurous, goal-oriented, creative, sociable, and balanced. So it might be that you have to look for a creative solution in order to get yourself past that non-committal phase. So like I just recently, one of my friends posted, he does a lot of storytelling shows and things like that. And he was saying how when he was developing a one-man show that he was doing, he used to go up to, in LA, the top of a parking garage. And he was like, it was amazing because LA, of course, is a big city and everything's kind of here. So he would go up there and it felt open and free and he could see the mountains and the city and he would just get inspired to work. And it's like looking for creative solutions like that could help you to commit better, because then you're like, oh, now I look forward to going to that place where I can feel open. Or if you're really connected to nature, it might be like, I'm just going to go outside and think about this project for a while, or whatever it is that creatively a creative solution to the trouble committing, instead of just being like, I'm just procrastinating, I can't commit to anything, being like, no, what part of this, what would make this easier to commit to, if that makes sense. And then there's a lot of gold on your external as well, which is being artistic, deeply insightful, affluent, enlightened, magnetic. You're also an overthinker, I'm guessing, because the flip side of that can be ego-centered, distrustful, or over-analytical. And the over-analytical is the one that I'm like, that's like, so this is the part where I'm like, I just pick one and I'm like, I'm getting over-analytical, where it's like, you have to just trust your gut, trust that like what you're coming up with or what you know from that deeply insightful space is just the truth. And if it's not, you shift gears, you know, like so little in our lives are ever like set in stone. You know, it's like, okay, we can always just shift gears. So it's like, okay, I'm going to trust my insight. I'm going to trust my intuition and just go with it. Which, if we look at the top, a little bit on the left, there's a little bit of darker where it's almost like if you had a part in your hair, instead of being right here, it's kind of over to this side. So to me, that tells me you lean more towards your logical side than your intuitive side a lot. So you use logic to solve problems. So with that too, it's like, yeah, that logical side of you, I'm seeing so much in this picture. So it's funny because when I do readings, when you got a reading with me, it's like, I can only say so much in the, but it's like, right, when I see this, I'm like, there's so many layers to it. Also with that magnetic, you probably are the kind of person that has people like me who just talk, who don't have a problem just speaking, like come up and like tell you their whole life story in the grocery store, because that magnetic pull to that gold, like pulls them in, draws them into you. And they're like, oh, I don't know why, I just feel like talking to you randomly. And you're like, okay, like I need to get home, but thank you, and it's probably what makes you a great podcast host as well, because people want to open up and talk.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And then we're also seeing the white around your head, which is usually messages like right here and here. And I'm guessing that, so what I'm thinking is you probably get some emotional hits, but more often than not, it's more physical world signs or seeing things or like hearing things, all of that physical, because the photo right person left is a little less than the other side, than the right side. So when we're looking at the picture, I'm flipping my left and my right. So the side that has the like gold and the orange has a little more white as well. And since that's our physical world side, my guess is that your, lack of a better word, precognitive skills, I guess, are more physical, like more like you see things or you hear things physically. And then sometimes you'll just get like that gut feeling, or your emotions will tell you something. You'll be like, okay, I've got to listen to both sides. So, and again, we're going more towards logical than emotional on that too.
Yeah. And let me see. Let me see.
There we go. So we were talking about that protective energy too. With you right at that point in time, that protection was around your third eye and your sacral. So the sacral chakra, which is the second chakra up, is all about change and being adaptable, creative and adaptable. So it might be that you were like, okay, right now I'm just going to pull myself in. Like it might have also been like, I'm guessing people at that event know who you are, know the work that you do. And there was probably a little part of you that was like, okay, I don't need people asking me about this stuff because I'm here for my own stuff. So it might've been that where you're like, okay, I'm going to pull back on the creative part of my life to be here and in the moment, because the root chakra is really strong. You're very grounded in who you are. You know yourself really well. You also were in your element. Like you're like, yep, we can see it all over your aura. This is your passion. This was the place that you felt very passionate about. And then we talked about the sacral, and then we go up to the solar plexus. Like you have all the tools you need. You can rely on yourself. Like we were talking about, like one of my friends asked me before tonight, like if I was nervous, and I'm like, I can pretty much talk. Someone asked me to talk. I'm not nervous about it. And so with that, you're also probably the type that like, as soon as you start the podcast, you're not like, oh gosh, I hope this is going to go okay. Like you're like, no, whatever happens, we're rolling with it. I got this. I know whatever life throws at me in whatever arena I'm in, I can handle it. I'll deal. Heart is open. So very loving, caring person. You are like able to give and receive love easily. You're like, yeah, you probably have a really good friend circle, very like, people that confide in you, that you can confide in, that you know where that is. You speak your truth beautifully, like your throat chakra wide open. You don't have a problem. Thank you for pointing to them. So I'm like, as I'm going up the chakra line, you don't have a problem like speaking your truth and sharing and talking to people, and communication is a strength of yours. And then when we look at the third eye, so it's interesting that both the third eye, so this is what I was talking about with protection. We were in the jail it was a haunted jail, wasn't it?
It was.
It was like, I a lot of times do what I'm seeing here, where it's like bringing it in close. Because I'm like, I don't need to see it. I'm just going to be here doing my work. Please don't mess with my equipment. And which I have another story where I was at another haunted event, and the next event after that one, I remember telling the little girl who was haunting the area, I was like, you can watch, but don't mess with my equipment. The next time I did an event, my equipment shut down completely, like would not work at all. Like, and then I sent it back to the manufacturer. I was talking to them. They're like, we can't understand what happened. And I'm like, yeah, I go to a lot of haunted places. That's sometimes what happens. But so with that, I feel like there was a protection as well with the third eye and the crown chakra. We're seeing a little bit of static in those chakras too. So it might have also been a time, because it's the crown, your connection to the divine, and third eye, your intuition. So when we're seeing both of those with that little darker staticky energy, it's like you might have had a time when you followed your intuition or were asking divine for something, brought it in, and it didn't come out the way you thought. And so you're questioning yourself, like, oh, should I have done that? Should I follow my intuition? Did I hear that right? Was something, it's almost that little bit of like just static where it's like, this didn't work out the way I thought it was. What's happening? Kind of nervous energy, but then also protective energy, which would make sense in the setting we were in, to be like, okay, I don't want like any entities to attach themselves to me. I don't, I want to see them, interact, whatever you want. Like you were creating your own boundaries around it by protecting yourself in your third eye and crown, where you're like, okay, this is what I want. This is what I don't want.
Right. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more so it can be more clear what you're.
So if you look at that other picture, you see how these, I'm pointing to my screen and you all can see that, but you see how, when you're looking at it, like we're seeing the similar picture to this, you're seeing how these top two chakras are pulled in, so that the two purple top ones are pulled in tighter than like how open the blue one is, how open the green, how open the yellow are. Like those are open and clear. And then the top two have just like a little bit of darkness through them. And so that's that little static that I was talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought I would zoom in because
I love it.
You can't really see it on the far back. So I was like, talking about the static, and it's like I'm looking at the photo going, where?
Yeah, those top two chakras. There's a page later on, if you scroll through it, like it really does show like the hash marks in it. And I think it's just because I'm used to seeing, let me see if I have one with a clear.
Here. I got the whole thing here. So
so when you're going through the report too, you're seeing like what the personality traits are, with the mind-body connection, the spirit, all of the different ways. It's a kind of like, when we talk about horoscopes, where you're like, oh, this is what an Aries is. This kind of goes into that. This is what your personality, and this is all your stuff with your specific colors. And it goes into where the color placement is as well.
Is this what you're looking at?
Exactly. So if you zoom into that, you'll see that the one with the 1 and the 4 have a little bit of black lines in them, or little black dots on them, versus the other ones that are like really clear. So that's where I talk about that little bit of static. And so where it's like, and we see now exactly the difference. Like your strength is counting on yourself. That's your strongest chakra. That's what you lead with. Were there some changes going on in your world during that time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why number 2, or the sacral, the orange one, is more like pulled in, because it's like when you're working with the chakras, a lot of times they'll pull in more. So yeah, and then the 6 and the root, like you knowing who you are and speaking your truth are your next two strengths, then your heart, then trusting divine, being connected to divine. And then the two that are protected are your third eye and your sacral. So it might have also been like, yeah, like I said, like protecting it.
Right, because I'm looking at the third eye being a 1, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think so.
No, no. But I think and that's where like I really do like what I was talking about with my best friend who's an empath. She's like, she'll do that so that she doesn't have to take on other people's energy. And so some people with their empathic traits, you might have been like, okay, I don't need to pick up on psychic energy from everyone at this place. Like I'm in a group of a lot of people. And a lot of times when we're in those groups, that's when we tend to protect. We're like, okay, like you don't want to get like turn around and, there was an author sitting next to me, turn around and be like, oh, I just saw your whole life story. Okay. You're like, no, I want to be able to protect my own energy, especially if that's how your empathic gifts work. Or they might be like, you get a gut reaction to people. And so you're protecting also in your sacral.
That is really cool how all of that gets transmitted through.
Through your hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
In like 30 seconds. I know. It's wild to me. I just did earlier this week a corporate event where we had, in 2 hours over 100 auras probably. And how many people were like, oh my gosh, that's dead on. Or they would, their friend would be like, that is totally you. And then we'd have something similar, but different words would come out and they'd be like, oh yeah, that's it. And so, yeah, which is interesting when I look at these two, when I read the reports, I'm always like, instead of high, medium, or low, I feel like it's protected or open, like one that you rely on, one that you rely on, or that you're protecting less.
Right.
Versus energetic. And then this is one of the things I love too. Again, you're a thinker. The mind, you're 55, at that moment, you're 55% in your mind. And I think it's because you're the type of person that likes to figure out things, like you enjoy learning. And so as we were doing this, I think you're probably like, okay, what all is this going to tell me? How are things going to work? Like you really, you're a thinker. And then in your body, because you had to be physically present there, was 36, and then spirit was 9. Again, I feel like it's that same kind of thing where you were just more in analytical mode. Like you really like to analyze things. And I think my gut is telling me right now, you trust in spirit. So you're like, okay, I don't have to live there. I just know there. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's true, as I do trust in spirit.
Yep. So it's like, and then, yeah, physicality, you're there. You're there physically. And, I think it's also, it's interesting because I never read the reports. And I was like, oh, represents the focus on creativity, mental communication, represents the physical realm. And then personal development and inner qualities, where you're just like, you were more interested in learning about what other people do than focusing in on yourself as well.
Right.
Like, you tell me your stuff.
I was like, yeah, I remember because I was thinking like, how is this machine going to read me and how is it going to know me? So it's like, yeah, I was like totally
in your head,
in my head. And I'll laughingly, I'll say to people all the time, like, please don't try and read my mind because I don't go in there myself, so I ain't going to get you out of there.
Like that is not yours to read. I love it. But yeah. And so this is what we're looking at right now is a 14-page report, or 15-page, I guess here, that also gets generated. And there's like all this intricate information. Did you read through it all?
I kind of skimmed through, but I did read the parts that were like I was drawn to read.
Yeah. And I think that that's the best way to, like I said, I don't think I've ever even read my own. Like it's just not how I'm drawn to things. I'm like, oh, I want to see it and like feel it intuitively versus being like, okay, I need to read every single thing. But like, the size of your aura, here we're in, 40%, which is sort of the middle that it's like, you have that radiant energy, but I feel like, again, was there some reason, were you in protection? Sorry, I don't want to like, tell me everything.
I was.
Yeah, because I feel like it's a little bit in protection mode. You're kind of bringing your aura in some, which it's funny because I don't know if you have like ever used dowsing rods to like do aura size,
I've
but
never done it for aura size, but I have used them.
yeah, so with an aura, you can actually take dowsing rods, you hold them and you ask the rods to show you the edge of someone's aura and you walk closer and closer. And then when they go out, you're like, okay, here's the edge. And I had one of the energy modalities I do, my teacher used to use it that after she would work with a client, she would then see how much more expanded their aura was after that. And it's almost like how much more receptive and open they were after the energy work. And it was always really cool to see like the change. I just did it on my sister yesterday and I was like, did like 3 minutes of energy work and her aura was like 3 feet bigger. I was like, see? And she's like, and she's not a big energy work person. It's just not her modality. And I was like, that's what I've been talking about. And she was like, that's wild. And I was like, I know. It's fun. But yeah, so with this, I also think that it's that kind of like you're just under 50%. So like at 50%, I'm usually like you're half introverted, half extroverted. So I feel like you keep a lot of things private, but people are like, you're so extroverted. And you're like, actually, I'm not. You're a good listener, which is why people probably think you're, like I'm like, you've listened to me for how long? But it's that you've got that really nice balance of like yourself, but you also protect your own, you're more private than like, I'm just going to tell you everything about me. Like I'm a blurter. So I'm like, I'll tell you everything about me in 5 minutes. And like, versus you, where I think you're a little more guarded. You're more like, okay, I'm going to tell you what I want to tell you at this point, but I'm not going to tell you everything.
Right. And
You earn the trust. People earn your trust.
right. And full disclosure too and transparency is I was in a mindscape right in that moment of dealing with a couple of different elements of upset about something, but then really excited about something else, and a mix of how is this going to work with what's going on with this. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I was all over the map.
Yeah. So that makes sense that it's like, yeah. It's like, I don't know what this
I,
is. I'm gonna
I'm actually impressed it was at 40%.
I feel like you can't help yourself though. Like you're fairly like open to the world where like even when you feel like you're like, I'm like this, I'm shut off, nobody can see me, you're like, okay, I'm still pretty open. Like I still want to know about things.
Yep, that
So
is very true.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, and then the aura waves, smooth and gentle waves. So yeah, which even when stuff's going on around you because of what you just said, like you would expect to see this, like there are some ripples in it. We're looking at from the inside going out. Like I
Oh,
do see
so
some ripples.
do you want me to zoom in some more?
Yeah, it's funny because it's red on red. Oh, because your aura's red. So as we're seeing like this like ripple, ripple, ripple on there.
There, is that better?
Yeah, it's like, okay, there were some things upsetting the total calm. But then when you still look at the most external part of that, it's smooth. Like we don't see the ripples and where it goes more to the pink. We see it more in the red. So it's like internally you were having all these ripples. You were like, oh my gosh, I'm agitated by this. This is happening. This is happening. But on the external, you're like, it's cool. Nothing to see here. Like, so it's like, again, very like internalized of what was going on.
That's very true actually. Is I can have a smile on my face but internally be
Yeah.
like in pieces and like fixing and working on fixing, but nobody will ever know. And I've even had people ask me like, do you even ever get upset because you always seem to be smiling? And I'm like, oh, I do. You
Yeah.
just won't see it.
You knew what was going on in here. And that's what that's showing is like, yeah, in here you've got it all going on, but out here you're like, it's all good. Yeah, because I would not have known that day that anything was amiss.
Yeah, I've learned to. I won't say hide, but just not reveal stuff that it's personal. So I'm like, I'll keep it within and
Yeah.
just keep the persona on the outside that I feel like yeah, this is what people come to see. This is what, people expect. And, this is what I'm wanting to be. So let's just, that old adage, fake it till you make it kind of motif
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's a little bit of that too. Like, what do you want to be remembered by? Like, you don't want to be the guy who's always in, like dumping problems or trauma dumping or whatever it is. Like, you're like, no, I know and it goes back to what we were talking about with the sacral. I know I can rely on myself. I don't need to share all this in order to get validation or someone else to solve my problems. I can handle my own. And so you're like, I've got it. I can do this myself.
Right. And one of the other thing that's funny too about that is I've been like having a lot of people talking about astrology lately.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things is, being Pisces, they're like, we have the reputation of being laid back, easygoing. And so it's like, I'm like, all right, this is who we are.
Yeah.
I can naturally get into that rhythm.
Yep. Yeah. You're like, because it flows with who you are. Like all of it flows together. Yeah. That makes sense. I'm an Aries, so little ball of fire. My whole chart is fire and air, which makes sense with all the talking. Yeah. So that's with the aura wave. And then there's something else here, isn't there? Is there one more page under this? Oh, two more pages.
Let me
Ooh,
go see.
there's more info.
Yeah, we're on 13 of 15.
Yeah.
Oh, the yin yang.
Yeah. So this is, and it's what we kind of see in that first picture too. Like, what are you showing externally? What do you keep internally? And so the orange was your external side. And so with that, sorry, you stimulate creativity, productivity, pleasure, optimism, enthusiasm, and emotional expression. So, it's all of that. That's your external. And then your internal is more, obviously, I need my glasses. And that did
I
not.
could try zooming it in. I just felt like I would
I know
lose some of it.
it's smaller on my screen too. So with the internal, it's you increase your physical energy, your vitality, the grounding, because it's also the color of the root chakra, stability and passion, spontaneity. So you're not afraid to go with the flow, and that's what you put out to the world. Or that's
Right.
your internal. Your internal. Your external is the orange. Like, I'm adventurous, I'm happy, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, unfortunately, gotta stick to that zoom. That's as far as it'll let me
That
zoom and keep.
works. I know. It works. Well, it's funny because when my business partner and I developed, so when you get an aura photo with me, you get this pamphlet that I check off your colors over here. I write what's going other way. I write what's going on over here. I check off the colors over here. But what we develop these like intuitively and by reading what's in this stuff and all of that. So what I tell you in a live reading is a little different than the words that they'll use in the report. So it's almost like you get two views of your aura, like what I see in it and then what the report generates for it.
No, I like that.
Yeah. I know. I feel like it's just like, there's two, like someone was like, yeah, in the report it said da 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 da. And I was like, oh yeah. I mean, that's true too. It goes along with what I told you, but just in a different way. And it also because some things hit people differently than others. So sometimes when you read something, you're like, that feels true. Or sometimes when someone tells you something, you're like, oh, that makes sense. Or like it explains it more.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm looking at, I just noticed the arrow and the cross. Is there meaning behind that symbology? Or?
Symbols for yin and yang.
Oh, okay.
The arrow is your external, the cross is the internal.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just what they, I guess, use. Or masculine, feminine, actually. That's what that is.
That's where I was thinking, but I was
That's
like,
exactly what that is. I'm like, it's your masculine is your external side, your feminine is your internal. And so that goes back with, the internal feminine side is very much like where we hold our emotions, where we hold the femininity, like when we talk about like shoulds about things, like they could be shoulds from the females in your world or emotional shoulds. I should be feeling this. I should be sensing this way, or I should be internally this way. Your external side, the masculine side, is out to the world. So like those are things like in the physical world, how you present yourself, the way you walk into the physical world, the way you like approach jobs, work, anything, like the way you speak, things like that. Also, it's like if you have like shoulds or anything on that side, it's going to have to do with the paternal side. So, like, if you get shoulds from your dad, like you should be this, or you shouldn't be that, or you should do this, or you should do that, that's going to be on more on that side than on this side. Which it goes into IET, which is another modality that I do. And so it's like using all of that, but when you combine them all, you're like, oh, it creates this picture.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, there it goes. The yin yang pointer.
the visually depicts your overall relaxation levels. So the higher the blue indicates more relaxation. So this is another one of those things where it's like, externally to me, you looked relaxed. If I had seen this while we were talking about it, or if you hadn't told me, I would have been like, well, this is weird. That feels off to me because you seem very relaxed. But the machine is like, nope, something's going on. You're not that relaxed. Like it reads the energy. So yeah, so it's showing like a little lower than, normal relaxation, like a little tense. So.
That's interesting how it can depict that, because you would think you're in, like you're saying, you saw me relaxed. I was visually feeling myself trying to be relaxed through this, but yet the machine goes like, I ain't buying it.
Yeah. Well, it's true too. And literally when you're like, relax, 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 you're like, relax, 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 relax. Like you're tensing up, just being like, I need to relax. Yeah. It's funny because some people will try and like alter the machine. And it's like, unless you can really get into like a super Zen flow, like I've done it. I've literally sat there and I'm like, I'm going to change my chakras, or I'm going to, like just really zen out. Is it working? Is it working? And it won't change. And then as soon as I like really stop trying and I'm like, I'm just going to drop in and like do it for real versus trying to do it, that's when you'll see a change. But it's like, you can't fake the, I'm just cool, I'm calm, I'm relaxed, it's fine.
You got me now thinking like, man, if our paths cross, I'm going to totally go Zen mode on the machine and see if I could totally be like off the chart relaxation.
Challenge accepted.
Man versus machine.
Exactly. That's so funny. I know, it's funny. I have a friend of mine who she owns a metaphysical, well, she's about to open a metaphysical shop in Fredericksburg, but she owned one in Albuquerque. And like she would literally, we would watch her aura on the machine as people, like as her cousin would walk up, some of her chakras would change, but her aura wouldn't change. Like, so who she wasn't, or if she would hold haunted objects, her chakras would like either protect her from them or like open up to them. It was wild to see. So this one, let's see, the high vibration versus lower vibration. And we are more in like, yeah, like at that point, again, protective mode. You were in that middle, like it was a good place to recharge your energy. You needed more relaxation, but you were also in a good place to like really go for goals, like to achieve stuff. So if you were planning on like going in and like really thinking about things and, processing, it was in a good, but again, your intuition was kind of like, I'm not going to deal with that right now. So I don't know if there was something that you were like feeling intuitively that you were just kind of like, nope, not buying it right now. Hang on. Tell me later. Like kind of pushing it aside or ignoring something that intuitively you were hearing. But like your body, mind, spirit, those three are like really even.
And what's funny is I only see 4. What happened to the 5th one?
Which 5th? No, they're 4. Oh, these aren't chakras.
Oh, I'm like, man, there's some missing.
I know. So in this one, the green represents your mental energy, the light blue is your emotional, the red is your physical, and the purple is your spiritual.
That makes more sense then.
Yeah. So it's showing, yeah. And so it's like, it's that level where it's like, okay, it's time to recharge. Were we on, you were on day 2 of that event because you had gone to the first day too. So yeah, so it makes sense. Like we were kind of end of day, like okay, I need to go home now. Like,
Well, and I remember telling you, like, I was in your doorway, I think, like 5 times that day, and I finally was like, all right, it's time to go in.
yeah,
Let's see what this is about.
figure it out. Yeah. So there is also, yeah, that almost like with the intuition being low too, almost like, yeah, that little bit of like, let me see this. Like, you feel like I need to do this, but I don't want it. No, yeah, the arguing with yourself. This is
Yep.
interesting too. Like your emotion meter. So this talks about how emotional, like how you use your emotions. So if it's kind of that flat one that it's at the bottom with a little loop, it's like, oh, you're pretty much this. And then you're like, oh, and then you go, or oh, and you go down. For you, you're like, okay, I kind of, you ride the like nice wave of your emotions. You don't like all of a sudden turn around and, just yell at someone. Like you're not like that quick temper or like even like quick to tone down once you've gotten there, but you're like that slow burn of emotions. And then you're like, okay, you've got me to here. Now you're getting it. Okay, I'm going to let it go, let it go, let it go. Okay, now I'm chill again. I'm cool. But like it takes more to get you all the way to your angriest or your lowest versus going back and forth from like, everything's fine. What did you just do that for? Okay, it's cool. Don't worry about it. You're not like, that was like a really, you know, exaggerated version of it, but it's
No,
more,
actually, it's funny because I was a part of a program where it was trying to help men communicate better and express their feelings better. And they always would go to me and they'd say, doesn't this make you angry? And I'd be like, yes. Well, you need to express the anger. I am. And they're like, you need to scream. I'm like, why do I need to scream? And so it's like, and so I would finally scream, and they're like, do you feel better? And I would just say yes. It really didn't really do anything for me to scream.
because
But
you
I was
weren't,
like,
yeah, you
I
were
was like,
probably somewhere in the middle of that upward. You're like, I'm not at my angriest yet. Like when you get to that angriest point, like watch out.
yeah. And I tend to be emotionally like, if you do finally get me to my angriest, like you're saying, it may be like a pin dropped somewhere and had nothing to do with, and finally I hit that point, and then I'll like go outside and I'll be like, ugh. And I'm like, okay, now I feel better.
You're like,
Or I'll be like,
yeah,
I need to let this out. And so I'll just like I'll just visualize myself going, and I don't actually scream out, but it's like I'll open my mouth like I'm screaming.
yeah,
And I'm like, okay, that's
releasing that.
gone. We're
Yeah,
done.
yeah,
We can chill now.
yeah. That's yeah. Where it's like, yeah, it's yeah, I get it. But I
Yeah.
think on the outside, you probably look very much like the bottom one,
Yeah.
like very passive. But internally, you're like, yep, I'm riding the waves, but I'm figuring it out. Like I'm not going, yeah, you're not going to externally, unless you're like, yeah,
Yeah, which surprises me because I was like, when you said emotional, I was like, oh, that's going to be flatlined.
yeah,
Things I can brush things off real easy.
yeah. Like you don't hold grudges.
No.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, interesting. Yep, that's the end of the report. So yeah, cool. So that's what an aura photo can tell you. I love it.
Ah.
I know.
So
It's
yeah, and I gotta say too is I find it interesting how it determines the levels, because it's like, I know it's reading the body and I know it's reading the energy and everything, but there's that spiritual aspect to it too that I'm like, how does it measure that? Because it seems like that would be like the wrench in the works, because it's like spiritually you're letting things go,
yeah.
physically you're holding on to, but but it's saying, hey, you're not letting this go. And it's like, yes, I am.
It's that thing until like I can be like, okay, I'm totally zen, I'm totally calm, I'm gonna put my hand on and I'm gonna be purple. I'm like, nope, not purple, because I'm still thinking be zen, be zen, be zen, instead of being zen. So it's like once you let that stuff go, it's like, oh look, there it's gone. Yeah.
So I'm curious with all of these you're doing, and I'm not going to ask you to reveal any personal information around it, but have you ever taken like the photo and you're like, can you take a couple breaths and put your hand back on the sensor and let's do a different photo? This one
I
just doesn't look right.
I have sometimes if there's a funny phenomenon when I am in group settings, I will notice a pattern. And so sometimes if I see two people back to back and I'm like, your auras look strangely similar. And I'll have this with like best friends. They'll be like, yeah, we're best friends. And I'm like, your auras are almost exactly alike. And they're like, it makes sense. We're very similar. But I'll be like, you know what? Let me just take your hand off, focus on yourself, like take a few breaths. And like I had one girl who it was almost like she was younger and like in this group of girls, and it felt like kind of the strongest personality went right before her. And then she came on the sensor and it was very similar, but I was like, that I feel like she's picking up on her friend's energy. Like she's almost like mimicking it. You know how like when you're young, you're like, I want to fit in, I want to be like you. And it
Right.
felt almost like this mimic energy. And I was like, okay, just hang on a sec. Like, okay, and they were kind of chatting, and I was like, just go into yourself internally, think about yourself, what you like, who you are. And then all of a sudden, it just like, once she like kind of almost disconnected her energy, her whole energy shifted. And it was like, ah, okay. And then I was like, here's your aura. That feels right. Like, that doesn't feel like you're trying to, where it was almost that like tricking the machine, but not like I think she was genuinely wanted to be like the other girl, but it wasn't her true essence. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And the other way I'm looking at it too is like you were saying, like has the dark spots. If somebody was like really dark, going, "Hey, let me wipe this down real quick," and should we, have some of this water, and now let's try again, and you know, does it really change, or if it stays the same, like you're like, oh man, I really don't want to give this one.
I I mean, I think you haven't noticed I'm a little Pollyanna about most things. I'm like, we have good on everything. Like everything is good. So it's like even with this one where we're seeing a lot of the dark spots coming in, like that to me, that's, like even if like this whole side where it's like the side where it's not really, I should just look at it again. So where it's not, like this whole side could be dark. I could be like, what's going on internally? Like, are you really like you're letting go of some stuff? Like, I feel like you're really changing your entire life. Is that right? And then people, like 9 times out of 10, someone's like, oh my gosh, yes. But if they're like, no, I'll be like, actually, I've maybe had 3 people in 5 years be like, that's not right. And they're like, oh, actually, yeah. If that was the case, I'd be like, okay, let me just, take a few breaths, recenter on yourself. Like something's random's going on here. Let me wipe the sensor, put your hand back on. Let's see what happens and see if it shifts. And sometimes it will. Like if it is something that was kind of more like they were carrying and maybe weren't acknowledging. Like sometimes with where we see the static, if I tell someone like I'm seeing a lot of static here, did you recently say something that feels heavy on your heart? If they have static in throat and heart, and they're like, oh, yeah, I did. I'll be like, okay, there, it cleared. Like you just sometimes have to acknowledge what it is and be like, oh, that's what it is. Okay, I can let it go. So sometimes that's all it takes, and it's kind of that like sort of tightrope in a way where you're like, okay, what is, you kind of have to like intuitively as the person looking at the machine be like, that feels right, or something feels weird here. Like let me just tell me about this, or talk to them a little bit and be like, what am I seeing here? So, but like most of the time when I'm like, something's happening, and I'll just, yeah.
Okay, so that's good to know that dark spots don't necessarily mean something bad.
Nope. It's usually transition. It's usually like if someone, like for me right now, I have a lot of questions in my future. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like I'm trusting that it's all going to work out. If I did my aura right now, I might see on that external side a lot of that darkness just because I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm stepping into. I know I want something different. I know these are the parts of my life that I'm looking at changing. I just don't know what's going to happen. I'm just going to trust it and see and let it figure itself out.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, what, or it might show up that it's like all of a sudden it's like very violet. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm walking into a more like magical time of my life. Okay, that's interesting to know. Or like very orange. Like I'm about to start setting a lot of goals. Or red, I'm going to find something passionate, but it's not necessarily always future or past. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious with as technology is advancing and computers are becoming more like less computer, more like everything else we need in the world. Do you feel like there's going to be a day where there's going to be a sensor that's on a computer and you're going to be like, put your finger on that sensor and okay, this is what your aura is telling me right now?
Kind of like a mood ring. Like I feel like we used to have that. Like there used to be like a credit card size thing where you could put your finger on it
Yeah.
and show you, and a mood ring. I mean, do I think that aura photography will ever become that commonplace? Probably not. Maybe. Like right now it's kind of, I feel like a little more niche. I don't know. But yeah, it would be interesting if we could. Like, how are you feeling today? What do you need? Like there's some other machine that I wish I could remember what they call it, but it's something that you put your finger in and it will tell you like your physical things that are like, oh, you need your liver's, something's going on with your liver, or like, oh, pay attention to whatever levels of this you have. And it's like literally like reads off your finger. Like I said, I don't remember the machine, but like I was at an event where this guy had it and I was like, actually what I'm looking at on this report feels pretty accurate to my personal health, like what I know is going on. And so I was like, that's interesting. So, I mean, I think that, yeah, I don't see it becoming like that commonplace, but I would love to see it be something more accessible because it is kind of like taking a photo of where you are and seeing like we talk about how your aura doesn't change. Your chakras will change more rapidly than your aura because your chakras are reacting to the energy around you. Your aura is more, unless you have like a major shift in your life or a major personality change, it's not going to change super dramatically overnight. Like for me, I kind of go into two very specific modes. Like if I'm in work mode, if it's like one day that I'm like planning posts and like figuring out class schedules and figuring out events and like making sure that everything's on the website and everything's like where it's supposed to be, I'll be very much more in like green, yellows, oranges. Like I'm in goal setting mode. I'm in work mode. But then if I'm like about to teach a class about angels or do like a bunch of readings or do past life regressions or anything like that, my aura will like on those days when I'm like really in that zone, it'll shift more towards my violets. But like those are kind of my two because I have two very dramatically different aspects of life.
Right.
But like even like sometimes I'm just like, what's going on right now? And I'll see my chakras and I'll be like, oh yeah, that was what I was ignoring. Okay, I'm gonna deal with that now. Like it's kind of that little like reflection.
So I'm kind of curious with you doing like you're saying, coursework versus work mode.
Yeah.
If you ever are like going, okay, why am I struggling to focus on this? Do you sit back, put your hand on the sensor, and go, okay, I'm still in work mode. I need to get out of work mode?
You'd think, but no. Setting up the sensor to me is just like, oh my gosh, it's okay. I need to go get the computer, plug that one in, make sure the sensor's on, open the like, and I'm just like, I'm too lazy to do that.
Oh, you don't leave it on all the time?
No, I travel with it so much that it's usually packed away in a suitcase from the last event.
Okay.
So yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna take when we first got it, I did that. I was more prone to doing that, but I was also trying to figure out what it was showing me, so then I could talk intelligently about like we just did with your report, where it's like, oh yeah, now I understand what when I see this it means because of what's going on, being able to reflect back my life, being like, oh yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, like I am making that shift, and there's right outside of my external foot there's a black dot. Okay, I'm about to step into something new that I'm not sure what it is. I'm just trusting. So yeah. Or if I've been doing a lot of releasing work, something like in the bottom left side is like a lot of like emotional release work. When I see that, I'm like, ooh, you've been releasing stuff emotionally. Or like around the heart. Like a lot of times I'll see like the black stripe coming through the heart. And usually that's someone who's going through a breakup where they're leaving behind their past. Right now, their heart's in a place of transition from like, how do I separate from that person? And I don't know what the future holds. And like, I've had people who are like, I'll say something like that, and they'll be like, oh my God, yeah, like my boyfriend and I just broke up. I'm like, there you go.
Oh, I'm just picturing like, and not to get personal or anything, but I'm just like my mind when you were talking about that going, well, I like this guy, but I don't know where it's going. I need to get his hand on that sensor.
Honestly, two of my worst relationships were with guys, and I was like, do you want to know about energy work? Like, do you want me to do a reading for you? And they're like, no. And I'm like, what are you hiding?
Yeah, it's like we need to get your hand. Do you ever sneak the sensor under their hand
know,
and be
exactly.
like,
Can you just put your hand right here? I just want to test it, make sure it's working. Something weird's happening with it.
or be like when they're asleep, go, oh,
Right?
they're nappy. Let's see what's going on. While
Take a little peek.
maybe this will explain why they're reacting this way to this question.
It's like that thing when you wake up from the dream that like they did something horrible in the dream and you're mad at them in real life. They wake up and like, okay, what is happening? Because your heart chakra was in a really weird place.
It's like you said you liked this, but your chakra says otherwise. What's going on, Mister?
Yep.
I could see his face be like, "What in the world are you talking about?"
Exactly. What are you doing when I'm sleeping? I feel like that's kind of never mind. Like,
No,
that's not
that would be an invasion of privacy. No, don't
like
ever do that.
one of the reasons I'm single, like thoughts like that, where it's like, oh yeah, I could do that because, but this is how I would do it.
Oh, believe me, I probably already thought about that. Be like, nope, I'll still block that sensor.
Exactly. Like, got the walls up.
I could just see now. You'd be like, okay, sensors under the hand.
Yeah.
Read. Why aren't you reading? And slap the hand and wake up. Be like, what are you doing?
I know. I feel like you've got the emotional Faraday cage around you. Like you're not gonna feel any of these.
Be like that, or like hold up a card that says "nice try" and just put your head back down.
Exactly. You know what you're doing. It's fine. Yeah. Oh,
No, so where in New Mexico do you go and operate out of? Like, what's your radius for people
um,
to come around?
yeah. So in New Mexico, I will be at the Salt Cave in Albuquerque in early mid December. Mid December, yeah. And then I'm going to be up in Santa Fe. I think the second week in December, like December 6th or 7th. It's on my website, oraphotonm.com. And then December 1st, I'll be in San Antonio doing aura photos by appointment at the Stinking Rose here. So, yeah, and things are, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, things are shifting in my world. So I'm like, okay, right now I'm kind of like holiday time. I kind of pull back a little bit. And I'm like, I'll just kind of do a little here and there. So I'm like, I've got one event in all my places. And then, yeah.
Yeah, I like how you call that pulling back. You're like, to me, it's like when someone says I'm pulling back, it's like, yeah, maybe one event. You're like, nope, I'm doing 2 or 3 events, and that's me pulling back. I'm like,
I
okay.
kind of feel like I'm thinking, let's see, that is probably maybe 15 hours of work in a month. They're all like 3-hour events. They're not like all day events.
But you got the setup and takedown.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, but it's like, yeah, well, it
See,
used,
there's my mind going. It's
I
like it
know.
doesn't accept 3 hours. It's like,
Yeah.
nope. There's
Yep.
the
She said,
setup, breakdown,
there's the
travel.
travel. Yep. All of it. It's true. I know. It's, yeah. It's well, we used to, when we first started the business, we were like every weekend somewhere. And so now I'm like, oh, wow, if I'm not doing Saturday and Sunday, that's like vacation.
So where are some places or people that you've like seen and you're like, man, I really wish I could either go and do an event there or to experience the place or be like, man, I wish I could read that person's aura.
Hmm. That's a good question. I would love like somewhere like not Joshua Tree, but like somewhere that's like more of a beach. Like I do a lot of city work. So like somewhere that's more natural, like people who live in like that kind of vibe. I'd love to see how the auras are different in that kind of world than in like city life. Like I feel like that would be an interesting little juxtaposition. Or like I was picturing Antelope Valley outside of the Grand Canyon. Like I've been dying to go there.
Oh,
And I'm like, it's gorgeous there. But like the people who are like around nature more, I'd be interested to see, like it was interesting. Like I was saying, like certain events, I will see a very specific. I feel like your event, there was more red than I normally see. And like you had a lot of red in your aura. You had probably the most out of that day. And it was, but I was like, because I'm at an event where people are very passionate about what they're doing, I felt like I was seeing more red. And I was like, I wonder if it's the spirits too. Like if these people being around spirits like up that red ante, because I haven't seen that much red since. And I was like, this specific group of people seems to have some splash of red somewhere in their aura. But like the work event I went to the other night, I was seeing a lot of greens and yellows. It was a technology conference. And so it was a lot of people who are really in their creative side, but also like wanting to expand their worlds.
yeah. Well, and I also, in full transparency, I was doing a lot of networking that afternoon. So I was like, that's unusual for me. So
Yes. Yep.
I'd be curious to see what it would look like when I'm not in networking mode and just there.
Yeah. Just like right now. Like, well, even now though, you have to be on. But like sometime when you're like, okay, I'm just chill. It's my weekend. I'm not doing anything. What's that look
Actually, I don't even view myself as on right now. I'm just like,
like? Yeah.
I'm just along for the ride.
And you're like, just wind me up and I'll just
I'm like, yeah, I'm the host, but I'm like, the less I have to talk, the better I feel like. I'm like, yeah, this is.
I feel like then I've done my job, I guess, because I feel like I've talked a lot.
No, but I appreciate all that you were sharing and everything that you brought. And I was glad I had uploaded the photo. And because it's one thing to say, like, oh, you can look at this and this and this.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
just show,
like, okay, it's like, well, those are words. I don't really know what you're talking about.
yeah.
But when you see the photo and you see how you're looking at it, it's like, oh, wait, that puts it in a different frame. And I feel like people may be like, oh, I want to go get one of those done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it does. And also having you be so open to be like, yeah, this is what was going on. This is what I was doing right then and there. And it's like, oh, yeah, which makes sense too. Okay. Yeah. Which makes sense too why your third eye and crown were probably a little more pulled in because you were like, I'm in business mode. I'm not in ghost hunting mode, or I'm not in, whatever else it is mode. You're like, I'm in presenting myself and being business, being network.
Yeah, actually, that's probably true. I probably was more of one over the other, even though they're intertwined.
Yeah. But it's that, yeah, the idea of, well, I mean, I'm not a little scared,
Well,
but I feel
I
like that
also feel
idea of
like,
the
yeah,
electricity.
there was that nervousness of what is she going to tap into, and am I going to be comfortable with,
Right?
having to talk about this?
Yeah, exactly. And is this whole thing just like I've had so many people be like, "Is this real?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Try it for yourself. Tell me. You tell me." And like they're like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, you nail on the head." And even when I see someone, like I had a couple once, and their auras were very different, but I was telling him all these things, and he was like, "Oh my god, repeat that for her because yes." And I was like, and he was like kind of skeptical coming in, and I was like, something like there's been a change in your home, things like that, things I was just seeing. And I was talking about, he's like, oh my gosh, she and her daughter just moved in with me. And I was like, yeah, there feels like you're taking on extra responsibility, but you're nervous about it. And he's like, yeah, and so getting that like direct feedback, like, and you in real time being like, yes, this is what was happening. It shows, yeah, kind of the validity of the whole thing that started with a leaf, the Curlian photography, where he like put a leaf down on the x-ray and could see the glow.
Oh, yeah, I
That's where the
forgot
whole
about
order
that.
started. Yeah. So that's where like it was like, wait, there's an energy field around us. And then I think he kind of went down the path of like, what is this? Do people have this? If plants have it, people have it, right? And so, yeah.
Which, talking about the history of the photography, I remember doing an aura photo and they had a black cloth behind, and they said, yeah, you need this because otherwise it doesn't show and doesn't, it's not as clear. So is that a sign of because you didn't have the black cloth, so the sensors have upgraded? And
I think so. It gives you to me, it gives you a cleaner background if you have the background. But because of the nature of the way I work, I have found that it doesn't really matter. Like the colors come through solidly no matter what. So, like sometimes if someone's literally walking behind you, I'll be like, let me retake that picture because I really have a person right behind you. And, but like as long as it's just kind of generally, like I could do it with this kind of background. But I'm like, you might see, like I will look for things like this line going vertically or knowing that there's a line right here. So that way I try and minimize things like that. So that way they're not like, why is there a line in my aura? And I'll be like,
yeah,
well, that's because. And I'm like, it's because there's a
you,
door behind you.
because you decided to sit in
Exactly.
front of a painting.
I know. Exactly. I think it's because you're splitting your energy internally to be.
No,
Oh,
but I also wondered though, like when you're talking about like the dark spots, if you had the black backdrop, can that confuse the camera?
no. No, because I don't know if you noticed which camera we use. It is not close by. It's literally a normal webcam. So it's
Right.
actually not the camera at all. It's the hand sensor.
Okay. Because yeah, I was just in my mind thinking like, if the camera's looking and goes, well, you have this black here,
Yeah.
backdrop. Wait, the black is shining through the colors.
No, yeah. I mean, I probably have it close enough. If it's in here, where I packed everything, it's literally one of these little Logitech cameras.
Which is amazing,
Yeah.
honestly.
So it's like that's the camera because the camera's really only taking the picture of your face. Everything else that's generated is all generated off the sensor.
Oh, I thought for a second you were sitting on the sensor, and I was like,
I'm sitting on
"That's
a
a pretty."
table.
I'm like, that better be a stirrable sensor.
I know. What's never mind. I'm not gonna.
No, I meant durable because it's like
Oh no, I know, but I was gonna, yeah,
rigid.
what's the story of my butt? I'm sitting on the sensor. No, I'm sitting on like a table that I have plenty of room behind me. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's all really just read through this and then transmitted into the program, and the program like
So,
puts all the research that it has to create the show.
so I'm curious, can you buy just the sensor and plug it into a laptop and it does what it's supposed to do, or do you have to have specialized
It's got software.
equipment?
Yeah, no, it's I use a regular laptop. It just has to be like a high speed, kind of the same kind of thing where you would do if you were like gaming systems. Probably not even that high speed. Like you have to have enough memory to run the program. You just put the program on the computer. I mean, the thing that I feel like really it's learning all about it, like understanding what you're seeing and being able to translate that into something that makes sense for people. Because I'm like, if like I just had this corporate event was like, we don't want any readings, we just want them to get their pictures. And I was like, okay, cool, but that's not really the experience. Like if I just handed you, oh, I have a cat aura. If I just handed you this, you'd be like, that means nothing to me. It's me with a rainbow around me. And so like so I was doing like mini readings and just like really quick, like 2 minutes, but I'm like, I can tell you a lot in 2 minutes. Like, this is what this means, this is what that means, this is what this means. There you go. And they'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. So, so I feel like that part of it, it's like knowing what to tune into, knowing what to communicate, what you're seeing is the major part of it. Like after a while, but yeah, you can just buy the hand sensor and the, equipment and put it on your computer and yeah, have it right there for you.
And I'm curious, do you save the photos and then like if a client comes to you like, hey, I took your photo, say September, it's now December, and you're like, hey, look, here's both your photos, or
I can do that. Yeah. So like if I trying to see what I have near here. Like if someone, well, if I've emailed them the report, it'll still be in my email sent box. And I usually save the reports for about a year just in case someone's like, I can't find my report. Can you resend it? Or I never got it, which every now and then I'm like, oh, it bounced back, but it never showed up in my, it's lost in the ether. So I do save them for that purpose. But like if someone does come back and I still have it on my computer, I will like analyze the difference between the two of them, which these are, okay, so like let's look at these two. If these were the same people, the full auras, the same person, like let's say that person a few months apart, this is the first one, this is the second one. Like I would analyze that and be like, okay, that green that, like if, wait, I can't remember which I said was which. So if this one was the first one,
that's the first one.
Yeah, okay. I'm like, short-term memory. So like when we're looking at this one, I'm like, you saw the spots. So we're seeing a lot of changes. In this moment, you were really heart-centered. You were in a lot of that green. You were working on manifesting things. But around you, you had optimism. But there was some question about like where you were going, what you were reaching for, what was going on in your life. You were letting go of a lot of your past stuff at this time. Then when we go over to this one, it's like, oh, that heart energy that was in the center is now on your external side. So it's like you've almost like figured out what it was that you were working on, manifesting in your aura, like your personal stuff, manifesting. And now you're able to share that out with the world. So whatever it was, you're able to be back out in the world again. You're not holding it as much in. And then we see that yellow that was all around is now in the center on this one. And so that shows me that you've now more internalized and you're more grounded in your optimism. And then internally, you're also now in a place where you're setting goals versus like yellow is very much optimistic, happy, curious, enthusiastic, imaginative. So maybe in the first one, they're still curious about like what's going to happen. They're still in this state of transition because we're seeing all the dark spots in it. And then the second one, we're seeing like the full on, like the whole aura is like filled in, filled out. Like, so we can see how their life has changed in those two. Now they're thinking more about their goals. Yellow also has anxiety in it. So it might've been that they were anxious in the first one. And then they, like, that's why there's so many spots and like kind of funky energy in that first one. We're seeing a little bit in that first one too of like the orange around the edges. So it's like, okay, it could be that now they're ready for the orange and it's come in.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a tool of like self-discovery too. Like we have it in our pamphlet. I don't know if you read the whole thing, but like there's a part like aura photos are a tool of self-discovery. If there's something that you're seeing in your aura, if there's like a word that triggers that you're like, ugh, like I used to hate the word greedy. And I was like, oh, I just hate it. It's part of green. And I'm like, what? What is it about that? And I'm like, yeah, because it feels like just such a negative connotation, but it's like greens are also abundant. So it's like really just reminding yourself that having more doesn't necessarily mean greedy. It means, reminding yourself that it's your divine right to be abundant. You can have as much as you want, where it's like shifting the perspective.
Very cool. So we're almost at an hour and a half. So
could we fill an hour on auras?
apparently so.
Yeah. I know.
So what do you have coming up that you would like to promote? And just to clarify, you had mentioned your website and that is in the description. So
perfect. Yeah. So I have those 3 events coming up. One in San Antonio on December 1st, the following weekend in Santa Fe, the weekend after that in Albuquerque. And all of my stuff is Aura Photo NM. So if you find me on Facebook, Instagram, I'm not on TikTok because I'm just not. But like that's where I post like all my events. Or if you go to my website, like any upcoming events are on there. Or if you're interested in, I can't do Aura photos remotely. It has to be in person. But like any of the other energy, if you're like, oh, wait, past life regression. Yeah, let me do, I can do a lot of that stuff remotely. So you can always just reach out. Or if there's an area that people are like, can you come to this area? I'm always open to chatting about it. So.
All right. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. Love it. But yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for being a guest. And overall, thank you for being you.
Thanks. Right back at you. Thank you for being you.
Thank you.
And for allowing me to like go on about your aura and your personality and all that good stuff. So.
No, it was good to hear because it reminded me and like refreshed my memory of what it was, because it was like, yeah, it's like you're saying, the day you get it, it's like your mind is like, okay, yeah, you're processing, and then it's like, oh, what was I processing? what was it again? And then it's like,
yeah,
hearing that and going, oh yeah, that's what we were talking about.
It like brings you back to that moment in a jail cell in Palestine, Texas.
And I think I even remembered the colors right.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. You're like, there was a lot of gold. And I was like, and I was like, oh, there is a lot of gold. You're right. Gold's a little, one of the rarer colors.
Yeah, I remember too. And it was funny, you were looking at it and going, so there's red here and wait, hold on, is that, wait. And I'm like, what? You go, you have gold here. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And
I don't know what that means, but cool.
Yeah. Like, thanks. It's good, bad? Yeah. I know. The worst part is when I'm doing one and I'm like, huh. And people are like, what? I'm like, oh, no, sorry. It just shifted somewhere. And I was just wondering about like, I'm just in my brain. They're like, oh my God, what did you see? And I'm like, because it feels like a lie detector to a lot of people. I'm like, oh no, it just went from this to that. And that's unusual. I'll show it to you in a minute. And I'm just like, I'm not worried, but sorry. Didn't mean to alarm you.
Yeah. It's like the teacher that goes,
Yeah.
And you're like, what? And there's like, this is good. It's like, really? Yeah. You had to build that up for that?
Exactly. Oh, it's funny. Yeah. My other one is, interesting. What?
I remember that.
Yeah. Like, I need to learn to keep my mouth shut, but an hour and a half later, we obviously realized that's not a strong suit of mine.
No, but I think I surprised you when you did that to me, because I think I was like, something interesting, and you're like, yeah, actually.
It is.
You're like, huh. I feel like I didn't act like you or respond the way normally people do.
It's like, what? No, something's yeah. Like so many people are so afraid of what they're gonna hear that instead of being like, what? They're like, what? Like, no, it's just something interesting.
Like,
Yeah.
I need to run for the door now.
Right. Yeah.
What you're about to reveal, do I need to run first?
Yeah. I know. I know. It's funny how many people are like, I'm so nervous. I'm like, there's nothing to worry about. Like it's gonna be easy. So
No, it's like you don't understand what's in these auras.
I'm like, those are the people that I like to do just mess with them. Be like, oh my, okay, no, it's fine. It's cool. Like, I'm just kidding. It's fine.
Be like, oh my god, you have. Oh wait, never mind.
I did, just a quick funny thing. Like, I did have one guy, this was years ago on my old equipment that kind of showed up a little differently. And we didn't see black a lot. Only once we saw black on that old equipment. So when I started getting this new one, I was like, what does all this black mean? Like, what is that? But this guy had like a streak of black on his internal side. And I was like, what? I was like, that's not what I'm seeing. And he wouldn't let me, like his wife and I were kind of chatting and he was like, no, be quiet. Don't tell her anything. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll just do my thing. She didn't have to tell me anything. Like, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you no matter what I hear. And then I was like, there's this odd streak of black. And it was the only time that I was kind of like, what is this? And he was like, I actually do exorcisms. And he's like, so like I pull out demonic energy. And he's like, that's exactly what like it was something like where he like really connected to that. And I was like, and I called my business partner. I was like, you will never guess what happened today. I was like, this was just crazy. But I was like, okay, it even saw that. So
I'd be like, maybe we need to rethink the company path that we're on.
Could
Do we
someone bring me
really
some
want to
sage?
like, do I really want to start photographing this?
Exactly. Like, need a little Palo Santo, a little sage. Let's clear the air. Get me some fresh energy in here. Really wipe down that
Be
sensor.
like, I'll be back in half an hour, people.
Exactly. Funny. That's great. But yeah. So yeah, that's aura photos.
You should totally do that as a voiceover for everything.
What the?
How you just did that with the aura photo.
So that's aura photos. Aura photo, New Mexico. I'm just loopy.
Best time for this question then.
Well, that's like the funny thing is when I get to this point during readings, like it's close to an end of a day, all of a sudden I'll just start talking and not paying attention, and people are like, "What did you say?" I'm like, "Yeah." So what's the question?
From your life's experience, doesn't have to pertain to aura photography or energy work, just your experience in general. What is a golden nugget to leave the audience with?
Ooh. I think you get to decide. Nobody else can tell you anything about your life, about your beliefs, about where you're supposed to go, what you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do. You get to decide. Like life isn't as limited as we think it is. I don't know. That's kind of does that make sense?
That's perfect. And at first when you said that, I was like, so they're going, no, this is your nugget, not mine.
Yeah. But I feel like so many people, like I moved to LA after a road trip. I got back to San Antonio. My mom was like, so you went to go figure yourself out? Like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, you've always liked old movies. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to move to LA. I'm going to be an actress. And she was like, well, okay, I was thinking maybe you could work for the Texas film. I was like, no, that's what I'm doing. I'm moving there. You're right. That's right. And I was like, it was a decision that fast. And I'm like, okay, some people might be like, no, you needed to have done this, and that. Or, like I moved to New Mexico because I went to a party and someone was talking about the film office there needing an event planner. And I'm like, oh, I've done event planning. Sure, I'll move to New, like it doesn't have to be as structured and, linear as people Yeah, you get to decide what your life looks like.
No, I know. Yeah, I agree. And I was meaning like when you said
Yeah,
you
oh, I know.
decide. I was like, no, this is your nugget, not
You
mine.
decide my nugget. You tell me what I know.
I was sitting there going, what do you mean? I decide your nugget. And then you're like, extended. I was like, oh, that is the nugget. Whew.
That's the nugget. Yep. Like,
I
this is
was
getting a
like,
little sticky here. How do I tell you that that's not okay? Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those funny moments in live
Yes.
shows.
Well, that now I'm like, oh, the travel question was actually about me personally. Yes, Antelope Canyon is where I want to go.
Uh,
I know my
all
mind gets
right.
off track. So yay! But
Well,
yeah, thank you.
yeah, thank you for coming on, and thank you to everybody in the chat room and everyone that was watching this and going to watch this. And so, wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, or if you're asleep, wake up and watch this so you can learn about aura photography,
Yes.
and you'll enjoy it. So, it'll be worth waking up for. Shamelessly, I'm going to plug this episode.
Please do. After everyone's watched it.
Yeah. It's like, trust me, this is a must see episode. Wake up and watch. I will program you. No,
Exactly. You will enjoy. You will rate it high. You will watch it again.
you will watch this at least 100 times.
Exactly. Like, how did that become the most watched episode? Don't ask.
Magic, people. It's
Right?
Film
Exactly.
magic.
There was no subliminal messages in that podcast. Watch the episode. Watch the episode.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so
Yeah.
much. And,
Well, thank you.
if you ever want to come back on, let me know. We'll happily have you back on.
Will do. Yeah. Next time I'll figure out the screen so we can actually show the equipment live. Or we'll
Oh,
do
there we
something in
go.
person and we can actually show the equipment live with your equipment or like at your place. We'll figure it out.
Might have to do that.
Yeah. Like do an in person podcast and yeah, show real time what's happening. Yeah.
Be
And
like, I don't know if my studio's big enough for all the film crew, but we'll find a way.
it'll be fine. It'll work. So cool. Yay. Well, thank you again. And yeah, it was great
Yeah.
catching up with you and seeing you again.
Yes, you too, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. And with that, good night, everyone.
Bye.